Thanks a lot for keeping a date with us on the program Politics Today on independent television and radio. Two major talking points on the show this lovely Saturday morning is on the assent to the Electoral Act Amendment Bill by President Muhammadu Buhari yesterday, after days and weeks of to be or not to be controversy and counter-controversy. I mean, just 2 days or so before the assent of Mr. President, we saw the civil society movement, particularly in Abuja, leading a protest demanding Mr. President to assent to the bill. But some analysts actually said that Mr. President still had, between that time of the protest till March 1st or thereabout, to take a final decision. And then words came that it will be signed the following day or so, and then there was a postponement that it will finally take place on Friday, even though there were a lot of people who were still skeptical if yesterday's date will be realistic or realized. But ultimately, it's been done and dusted. But we'll look at the circumstances surrounding the delay and what the amended bill that has been signed into law will bring to bear on the 2023 elections and subsequent elections, and indeed the democratic practice in Nigeria. On the flip side, we'll be looking at the recent robbery attack in Urumi, Edo State, where countless number of people died. 4 or 5 banks were attacked in that operation, and then conflicting reports that the youths from Ubiaja were responsible in helping to recover some of the cars and the monies that were taken. And we also heard that, unconfirmed though, that someone was arrested in the process. But the Edo State leadership has been there, and the State Commissioner of Police is there. We understand investigation is going on. But some major fallout from that incident is worth talking about. And we'll be looking into that in the course of the program. But let me welcome very specially the program's officer, Foundation for Good Governance and Social Change, Comrade Christopher Ojekere. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, viewers.
I also want to thank very specially Barrister Sani Daud, who is a member of the Nigerian Bar Association Benin branch. We thank you so much for coming on the program.
I'm grateful. Thank you very much.
Okay, let me begin with you, Chris. There was a bit of pressure coming into play as it relates to the signing of the Electoral Amendment bill, but that has been done. Why did it take us so long? Or we're just, trying to cross the I's and dot the T's?
Well,
dot the I's and cross the T's.
Well,
yeah.
I think we were dotting the I's and crossing the T's, but there appear to have been too many I's and T's in the in the proposed Electoral Act bill. But first of all, congratulations to Nigerians that it has been signed. That bill itself is a democratic revolution. It's a revolutionary instrument for the growth of democracy in Nigeria. It took so long because of certain issues that are very well identifiable. Although the president in his preamble speech, before he signed it in the ceremony of signing, said he had to invite all the ministries and the departments and the stakeholders that are relevant, to examining such documents before he puts his assent. And that's why it took that long, probably. But we all know that the most contentious reason, and it remains contentious even to date, is the clause 84 of that bill. And that clause 84 stipulates that political office holders, appointees, political appointees cannot function in that capacity as delegates, either to vote or be voted for in any congress or party's primaries. Now, the president thought and made the point clear before he signed the bill and after he did, and he's still begging and asking and requesting that, we revisit that particular clause and do something about it by way of reviewing it. Now, the president said it will look like a constitutional contradiction because there's a constitutional provision that requires public office holders to retire 30 days, before an election, that we already had the constitution backing and covering that, and that this looks like a duplication which itself is not very favorable. He thinks it's an infringement on the right of political office holders who have the right to participate in the electoral process and the political process that brought them to power in the first place. So that was a very contentious issue. We heard it from grapevine that the governors and all the other political office holders were putting pressure on the president not to sign. And that remains unresolved. It will be resolved eventually. You know, incidentally, the masses are very happy with that clause, and they have their good reasons to be happy with it, because they think that the extant political arrangement makes it unfavorable for that clause not to be expunged, because they believe that every time you have an election, those who have political power, political appointees who are in political offices, use their influences unduly, you know, to skew the processes to their advantage or to the advantage of whoever they are supporting. You know, by virtue of enjoying that privilege, they are denying and disenfranchising other people, you know, from exercising their democratic mandate. So the issues are on. I have my own opinions about them, but that's what delayed the bill, you know, until now. But it's signed now, and we're happy with that.
All right, Sonny, you want to give us your perspectives on the undercurrents that delayed the signing of the bill up until yesterday?
Well, I told most of his arguments, and I think I've been told with his submissions. But in my view, I do not believe that there was undue delay, because there was time frame for the president to sign. The agitations were unnecessary, because the time for which the president should sign was still there, was still running. Well, of course, the pressures were somehow okay, but it's unnecessary because it's bound by constitutional provisions to sign within a period of time. It is only when that time has concluded, then of course you can raise your views. Now, in respect to the recontention issue of the provisions of clause 84 of 12 now, I think the call by the president that the National Assembly should review that to be tandem with the provisions of the Constitution, with due respect, shouldn't have been made at all. Shouldn't have been made at all. You see, when you look at the provisions of a law, you look at what is the intent in order to determine the utility of such provisions. What is the intent of the provision? Is it in bad faith? Is it in good faith? Is it intended to cure an anomaly? In this respect, it was to cure the disequilibrium between those in government and those who are not in government who want to aspire for political position. For instance, if a governor is running in the primaries with a no governor who is not a governor, and the political appointees are to vote, who are regarded as statutory delegates, maybe the commissioners, the chairman of the local government, or whatever you call them, some secretary, secretaries of government, so many other persons, they are already statutory delegates.
So naturally they will vote for the governor?
They will vote for the governor. So he has already created a disequilibrium between a serving governor and another person who wants to test his popularity with the governor. So he has maybe 100 persons as statutory delegates, whereas the other man needs to also struggle with him, with the other delegates who will vote. So in order to bridge that gap, that is the reason why that clause is also necessary. That is on one. Now, assuming the candidates themselves also want to contest an appointee, they are often touted as government-sponsored candidates.
Which could also be in their disadvantage.
Which, no, it's more often than not, they say it's governor that brought him out.
So it's an advantage?
It's an advantage. They say, don't contest with him. Governor they have already called all of us. This one. They also try to go to their various villages
and mobilize support for him.
Say, now, governor, even if governor didn't call them, but the man is a government, he's the commissioner. Now he wants to run for maybe House of Assembly or House of Rep. They go and say the same thing. It's governor that says the one they want to. They have already called everybody. So just tell everybody that governor says, and they have already brought money. People just, so it creates a disequilibrium in the process. So the clause is necessary to be there. Again, does it offend the provisions of the Constitution in respect to the resignation of a member to contest? No, it doesn't run contrary to it. What made that section innovative is because it was not provided for in the Constitution. So it doesn't run counter to the provisions of the Constitution, because there is no extant law that says a political appointee should not or should do the otherwise. So the section is innovative and it should be left so. If a person actually wants to contest on a plain ground, to provide a plain and neutral ground for everybody, resign and go and contest. There is no law that also bans you. If, for instance, you run an election, you lose, then you cannot go back on grounds that you have resigned. No. If, of course, you were good in the government, and the government said that on the basis of your ambition, you ran for an election and you lost, the government can take you back. Okay. There's no law that bans anybody who resigned not to go back. Okay. Even in any, whether public service, civil service, or whatever. If you resign an appointment because of an ambition, and that ambition could be materialized, you can go back if you have a good record. The people will take you back. Not to talk about appointment. If the governor also feel that you actually supported him, even though you resigned, you campaigned for him, and you voted in the primary because you resigned, you wanted to vote for him, yes, he can take you back. So there is no law stopping it. So to say that the National Assembly should go and review it, and if they do, it will show clearly that they do not understand the dynamics of the functions of the legislative.
If you already have that provision in the Constitution, and it's been replicated in the Electoral Act, we should take precedent.
Now, I say it's not there. That's what makes it innovative.
Okay.
What is in the Constitution is that any person who is in government employment, either civil servant, public servant, or government appointee, should resign 30 days to the elections. That is what is in the Constitution. The Electoral Act now merely stretches that provision by saying that if you are a political appointee, this is different from if you are a civil servant, if you are a public servant. It's different. This is specific legislation. That 30 days still runs against those who are public servants and civil servants. It's still there. That is not obviated. But this is specific law. The reason, that's why I said is the determinant, is to discourage the disequilibrium in the electoral process, in the contestation for political position, to show that everybody is running on the same platform, on the same platter, the same background. So it does not run counter to that provision.
Okay. All right. Let me proceed there. Chris, because we're beginning to look at the impetus this electoral law will bring to bear on our electoral process, particularly with 2023 in view. We just talked about Section 84, subsection 12, that's clause 12. That's what he highlighted on. Could you take us further on this?
Okay. I don't know if I can throw some...
Of course, of course.
Now, as I said earlier, I said I have my own
reservation.
Position, because we are talking of improvements in the system. And I wouldn't have had reservations if it did not include congresses and primaries. And I'm thinking that you would have to rejig, for instance, the constitution of the APC, that has so many of its members, almost all political appointees, as delegates. Now, if you are going to have to deny all of that from being delegates by virtue of the fact that they cannot except they resign, assuming, for instance, that they will all have to resign, imagine that you have so many number of people resigning from a government just because they want to qualify to be delegates to vote in the Congress or to be delegates to vote in the primaries. So that's the point I'm looking at. So I see it as something that has to sit down, we have to sit down and holistically look at. Because if they all resign, you have created a vacuum in government for that period of a politicking that will lead to eventual congresses and conventions or to the primaries of the various political parties. So I think we have to look at that. But let's come back to your question. There are very important and silly, and that's why the civil society, you know, I agree with Daudu that much of the agitation was uncalled for, but they were not without premise. The premise was that we had a similar situation in 2019. And we had this going back and forth in 2019. And so we said it was too late, that is 2018 into 19. It was too late to give Nigerians, and then because you know, the election were just by the hand. So the civil society was afraid that we are heading back to the same situation, where you now have this going back and forth. The politicians are taking us for a ride behind. They know what they are doing. And before you know it, it becomes too late again. We are never going to move forward. And that's why civil society mobilized to ensure that they force the hand of the president. We respect the timelines and the time frame. So that's the reason. Now, because we are afraid of throwing away, so to speak, the baby with the bathwater, there were so many important laws. Remember the third term agenda. Just because of the third term agenda, we had wonderful reforms that would have happened during the Obasanjo era. The entire reform process was thrown away because we wanted to throw away third term. So we didn't want such situation this time. And that's why civil society came out. Now, look at the question of funding, for instance. Because I believe in institutions and institutions being allowed to function. And one of the things that can hamper a sincere institution that wants to actually function statutorily and function in its role and mandate is funding. INEC had cried itself hoarse since it was established that they had problem with funding. INEC now, by this provision, will have not that problem. A year before an election, the entire funds that is meant for INEC to conduct the election is at the kitty of INEC, supported by a legal framework, which is the Electoral Act. That itself is a milestone achievement. Then remember the electronic transmission of votes. The electronic transmission of votes is going to shore up voters' confidence with about 80% of morale boosting that this process is at least acceptable and credible until it is proved otherwise. Because we are operating with technology here. And as some people will tell you, technology don't lie. Except when these young boys get into it and hack it. Now, if the process is allowed to run, technology is allowed to run, you can almost be sure that the results that are going to be declared by INEC going forward will be proper reflection. And I want to quickly tie that to a clause that said that it is not the number of accredited voters in the polling unit that will determine the credibility of the result. Unlike in the past where you cannot determine the number, you cannot determine the number that is being given to us as the total number of votes and tally it with the number of accredited voters. Now, by this clause, by this provision, if the electoral officer judge that the number does not tally with the number of those who he accredited in the polling unit, you can cancel that return by this provision. So you have such wonderful, provisions helping us. Then you have this where you have the ability to be able to now, by the courts, to admit in evidence technology. It has shortchanged many politicians who have won elections, but they have no proof. And when they bring video proofs and they bring technology proof to the court, it was inadmissible because there's no law backing it. Now you can have people like Alex Otti becoming governor. Alex Otti had won the case almost in fact, he has won the case, so to speak, substantially. But when he came to evidence, the only evidence he had to rely on was technology, and the court could not help him. And that's why Otti is not governor today. So we are going to have to avert such situations. These are wonderful provisions in the Constitution. There are others that we didn't, in the Electoral Act bill, that we didn't want thrown away. So they are there now. Now, what are the implications for elections going forward? I mean, it's an obvious thing. What we have now is a revolution, as I said earlier. Okay. We have an electoral and a democratic instrument to use to call the status quo, as we have it right now, to question about the way we conduct our elections in this country. And now, civil society, journalists, and all other activists and stakeholders should go and abreast themselves with those provisions and begin to make demands on politicians, on the INEC, the electoral body, to ensure that we follow to the letter all the stipulations of that Electoral Act. And we're going to have a wonderful election in 2023.
Ambassador Daudu, would you say Mr. President was buoyed to sign this Electoral Amendment Act into law by the desire to leave a lasting legacy more than any other thing?
Well, the access to bills passed by the National Assembly is one of the constitutional functions of the President, subject to minor qualification where he is not disposed to the provisions of any bill. So it's only a concert with the provisions of the constitutions that he must access to bills within 30 days. So it's not for the purpose of a legacy, it's to deepen democracy in Nigeria. Several amendments have been made to the Act, the Electoral Act. So this is not new. It's just to further deepen our political democracy. It's not for the purpose of leaving a legacy. If he had not even signed, it would be, of course, a disadvantage to him, except there is a convincing reason why he shouldn't sign. My contention as to whether his request should be granted, it has remained no, that request should not be granted. Now, assuming, for instance, a party that is not in power, will it not conduct congresses and conventions? So you must look at it from that point. That's why I say it will better create a level playing ground. If PDP is not in government in Edo State, would they not conduct their congresses on grounds that the political appointees are statutory delegates? We shouldn't be looking at that from that point. The point is that the National Assembly have made a law, and it remains so. The only way out is if anybody feels that it infringes the provisions of the Constitution, it should be challenged in the court. Okay. And if the court sets it aside as violating the provisions of the Constitution, already contrary to the provisions of the Constitution, then the Constitution takes precedence in respect to the qualification of persons who are capable of voting in congresses and primaries of election. So that can be tested against Section 1, Subsection 3 of the 1999 Constitution and see whether the Electoral Act is in contrary to the provisions of Section 1, Subsection 3. Okay. If it is so, the court will declare it null and void. And if it declares it null and void, the provisions of the Constitution supersedes that of the Electoral Act in respect to the qualification of persons who are to vote in congresses and primary elections of any political party. Okay. But to me, for the National Assembly to go back, and it means that when a place where we have 109 senators, 360 House of Representatives coming together with also special advisors from Ango telling them the nitty-gritty of the lawmaking, you go back again and, of course, amend it based on that request. It means, of course, that the National Assembly, as I said, may have not actually addressed themselves with the business of legislative making. So it should remain there. Okay. Anybody who now feels dissatisfied should challenge that session in the competent.
All right, Chris, I just thought about something which has to do with that. Many of the contentious issues, the people who are contending these issues are majorly the state governors, beginning with Section 81, which has to do with the mode of primaries. And now we have another one that is trending, which has to do with the statutory delegates and what you have. How do you describe this response that has been coming from the state governors towards this component parts of this bill?
Not just state governors. You might say political appointees. Okay. I don't quickly discountenance people's opinions and views, because he who wears the shoes knows where it pinches. Sometimes we may not have the entire facts of the realities, and then we take very stern positions. But if you want to look at it from the partisan angle, you would say because they are the ones that are somewhat directly affected. Now, for the direct primaries, for instance, and before I come back to that, you have reminded me of something I wanted to say. If we have institutions and they are allowed to function, for instance, it is not the state government that conducts primaries. It's supposed to be the political parties. Now, why are we having this fear? Because of undue interference of people in government, in the political process. And then capturing the political process and the political party officials and imposing their will on them. If not, we shouldn't have this problem, because you have the political parties who should conduct primaries, and if they are fair and equitable, and nobody's going to complain that you will not be, you should resign your post, because, if the people still choose to return you back, that's their own choice. Yeah. But the people cannot guarantee that liberty. They believe that their will not count because you are going to use undue influence by your political position. So, however, they are protesting because they are the direct, recipients of these laws. By recipient, of the effects of the laws. Now, they might think that the law is going to affect them negatively. If they are thinking so, then it means they are thinking selfishly, because they have their tenured positions. You are going to be there for 8 years. What anybody should be thinking is whether this improves on the electoral process and is creating for us a system whereby our elections will be more credible, and that a system that will throw up our best hands. So if you are thinking that it's going to affect your next election, or it's going to affect the next election of your godsons and your goddaughters you intend to push forward, you are thinking selfishly. But I'm not going to discountenance your view. I want to know why you have that problem. I want to know whether there are things we don't know outside of government that makes it, a bug, and a cog in the wheel of progress of democracy. So perhaps they've not been able to convince Nigerians that there's anything particularly, that is going to affect us if we allow that to stay. And that's why he's insisting that he doesn't see any reason why it should be revisited. It should stay the way that it is.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Daudu, do you feel differently about this, that the governors they are being selfish in always reacting to some of the sections in this electoral amendment bill that we saw in recent times until it was assented to yesterday by Mr. President. Is this selfishness on their part, or they're just concerned about the plight of politicians?
You know, the governors, well, will I call it selfishness? You know, everybody wants to protect his own. They feel they are governors. They have the resources, state resources, which they, of course, more often than not channel into their personal gains. Now, when there is a law that is geared towards deepening democracy, they feel it's an affront on their positions as governors, and that they ought to. But they fail to forget that they cannot be governors at the same time legislators.
Absolutely.
But they want to use their financial muscles to also ensure that that process is scuttled. But thankfully, we have seen a National Assembly now who is trying to do what is seemingly right. That was why some of us were also not pleased when they said they want to regulate the mode of regulating party primaries. We said that is not the functions of the National Assembly. I think they saw reasons with that agitation. It wasn't their function. They reversed themselves and ensured that political parties conduct their primaries. Now, if you look at the reaction of Governor Wike, you will see that he is also a lawyer. You will see his arguments that that request that the amendment should be revisited was not necessary. And that is the position. Now, for the purpose of ensuring that there is free and fair elections, beginning from the primary elections to the major elections or the general elections, it is good to have a level playing ground for every person, participating candidate. So at that point, people will now know that if he has done well when he was either an appointee, this is the time to reward him. Now he has resigned and he wanted to represent his people. But if he has not, a governor is now sending him, he has not done well as a minister, he has not done well as a commissioner. Governor now says, go and contest because I want persons who will be stooge in the House of Assembly, for instance. And the people will say, no, go and resign. So if he resigns, he no longer enjoys that government patronage. Okay. People will now see that, look, he's also an ordinary man like us. Let us, of course, go out there. But if he carries that cloth of governor sponsored candidate, people will say, he has all that it takes. I don't want to use a language that is not pritable. They have people who will follow them to anywhere they are going to on grounds that they are government officials. Boys and so many other places follows them, carry on pritable things and say, this is our man, chair. But if the man is just an ordinary person like me, nobody follows anybody to the polling unit or the convention ground. We just go there, individual votes, we vote and go back to our various home. So it is good that the clause 84, sub 12 is there.
Intact?
Yes, it's intact. It's also to down tension.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. If you just join us, it's Politics Today on independent television and radio, reviewing the recently conducted exercise of assenting to the Electoral Amendment Bill by President Muhammadu Buhari, so which means the template for the 2023 governorship and presidential election or general elections has been set. We recall some time ago, INEC chairman, Professor Mahmood, did say that he wasn't going to reveal or disclose or showcase the timelines for the conduct of the election until and unless the Electoral Act Amendment Bill is signed into law. So he has no other excuse now, Chris.
Yes, he has no excuse now. And I'm happy, you know, I said it here, that I was happy with the stance of Mahmoud. I mean, we must respect institutions that we have created. Now, by the Constitution, the extant law, which is substance, INEC is supposed to transmit a letter at least a year before the election, declaring that an election will be holding and giving us time frames. INEC had done that since, and that's why we had fixed the presidential election for February 22nd. Now, by Buhari signing this bill on the 25th of February, he has dislocated that timetable. INEC will now have to recreate another timetable to agree with the timelines. Now, against the time frame that he had given us before. And that's why INEC didn't want a situation where they would have taken certain decisions, several decisions, far ahead into time, and then you are now having them to reverse, creating confusion in the system. So that's why Mahmoud was insisting, give me your bill, give me your law, let me start to create framework. Okay. He's going to come up with guidelines for election, for the 2023 election. It's going to be based on this framework, this legal framework that he has, which is the Electoral Act now. So he was waiting for all of that before he took that decision. Yes. Okay.
All right, Vice Daud, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I think the follow-up to that is that, of course, immediately the bill was signed, the INEC has actually slated an emergency meeting to ensure that, of course, an adjustment is made to that timetable, which, of course, will still be within that February, maybe from February 28th to now, because 25th was Friday.
Yes.
So if it is adjusted with maybe some days,
4 days,
of course, it will still be okay. The Electoral Act actually is to drive the process. And of course, based on these amendments now, timetable should now be come out so that the political party also can key in and, of course, make a little adjustment to ensure that those persons who want to contest, who want to run for elections now, who are appointees, should do the needful. And when you are now sending your list of delegates or who to vote, those persons who are still there, they should also know what they should do.
Okay, fantastic. If you just join us, it's still Politics Today on independent television and radio. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll be looking at the robbery incident that took place in Urumi, with all the reactions and counter-reactions trailing that story. Please stay with us. We'll be back with you in a moment. Thanks again for staying with us on the program Politics Today on independent television and radio. In about 15 minutes' time, our studio line will be open so you can also call and participate in the show live. Well, it was a Black Thursday in Urumi, Edo State, where daredevil armed robbers took center stage, held the town hostage, where they robbed about 5 banks and several people were killed. And unfortunately, security agents were overwhelmed from what we saw, many of them running for cover just to save themselves, protect themselves, and be alive. And the latest update is that somewhere along the line, between the Ubiaja-Urumi road axis, the hoodlums left their vehicles and some of the bags or sacks of money that they carried, and then those things were recovered. Well, we heard on the one hand that it was the vigilante youths in Ubiaja that laid siege for these robbers. And if you watch the video, it was like a movie playing out. I mean, that was like a Rambo movie playing out. And for those kind of guys who were about 20 from what we gathered, heavily armed, how was it possible for the youths to be able to engage them? That's another matter altogether. But we also read that it was actually the police, the divisional police, headquarters that mobilized to block all the exit points, which made it impossible for the robbers to escape with their loots. Counted so far 35 million naira. That's the information that we have at our disposal. But let's look at the circumstances surrounding this incident in Urumi. And it's been over 10 years or thereabout, about 8 years or so, that this incident has happened. And then there is a pattern. Many of these towns, banks are usually easy target for these bad guys. And in some towns, banks don't exist. They will rather go to a more open town, you know, to be able to do their transactions. What do you make? Because I've heard people in Sabongida, Ora, Axis and stuff like that, you know, who have been victims of such attacks, you know, complaining that transaction is always a difficult thing. You now have to have a bank account in Ekmoma, for example. You want to do any transaction, you have to travel some 10 hours, or as the case may be, to get Ekmoma to do your transaction. Let's look at this, Chris.
You see, the point is this. I was discussing with a few friends a few days ago, and I am beginning to teach very strongly towards the theory that we are descendants of Ham, the third son of Noah that was actually cursed by the fathers. You know, because if you trace the etymology of that word, it actually means black, and you'll trace it to Egypt. Because it beats all sanity and logical, you know, mental process that for years we have been discussing issues of security that involve human lives. We're not talking of property. The banks is not important to me as far as I'm concerned. We're talking of the lives, the huge casualty that was incurred in this robbery.
Okay.
And we have numbers of banks being robbed within the space of 2 hours. And you have adjoining towns to Uromi. Ubiaja, you have Ewa, then you come to, on one side, you have all of them with police stations. Some of them with actual, you know, command, because I mean, you have the area command in each headquarters. Ekpoma should have a command. And then you have robbers coming from God knows where, robbing for 2 hours, killing as many people as possible. And then they start to exit, and then they exited. And then the police is taking the deputy governor round and showing the deputy governor what they didn't do, but what the robbers did. So the police have become a robbers tourist, you know, guide, explaining to the deputy governor what they did and what the robbers did. I mean, it's a shame. We are paying the police from our taxes. They have their problems. The problem here now is not to discuss the problem of the police. We are discussing, I like the way that the Ojuromi of Uromi, you know, replied to the deputy governor. He said they robbed for 2 hours and many of my subjects were killed. That's his concern. His concern is that Uromi citizens and citizens that were Nigerian citizens around the bank that they could have come from Ubiaja or anywhere were killed. Now, we are here contesting. The police is coming out with a statement that it was the DPO. The DPO is not DPO to block roads. The DPO is to go to the scene of crime and withstand the robbers and let the young boys block the road. It's not to block because there is no communication to you from the robbers that they are going to pass that road. No. They could have gone any other road. So if you were blocking all the roads, where did you find the personnel to block? You know how many roads enter Uromi? So where did you find personnel to block all the roads? If you had that number of personnel, why did they go to the scene to withstand the robbers in the scene and save that casualty? We have this perennial story. Auchi was a target. There's a bank in where they call Uwarake Road, the Union Bank. It was robbers. It was exactly the same thing. Afuze had banks. They closed it up. Sabongida had bank. They closed it up. You can't open banks in Sabongida, now you can't open robbers. The modus operandi is the same. They attack the police station, the local police station. And they always come to attack the local police station. You know, strangely, when the police station is most vulnerable. It tells you that these robbers are not strangers always. They have full-time, real-time information about wherever they are going to attack. They time it. When the deputy governor got there representing the governor, he said this robbery was coordinated. I mean, that's a civilian. By the time he saw the sequence of events and heard the narrations from traders and so on and so forth, he said this coordinated. So I don't know how such a magnitude of robbery could be planned, and police will tell me that information did not filter to them. No intel at all. That such magnitude of 4 banks being robbed within the space of 2 hours. So it is inexplainable to us. It looks so much like what was done by many conspirators. These robbers didn't operate like ignorant people. They operated like people that have intelligence, you know, that are professional intelligence, so to speak. And as to who ran after the robbers, Grapevine information has it that we have to give it to Assents boys here on the studios, and they are those spirits. And you raise a poser. That poser remains a poser, but I tell you that in reality, the achievements and the results are always there. The vigilantes will go where devils dare to tread. When the robbers enter into the forest, vigilantes will tell police, and it happened in Agbede, say, give me your gun, let me enter. The police was standing by the roadside. I said, give me your gun, let me go with them. And they went and brought back 3 of the robbers.
Wow.
So the vigilantes have always, if you give them the necessary support, the vigilantes and the boys are there to fight, meet these boys, one-on-one. No robber runs away and leave a cover. Okay. The firepower he met to leave 34 or 25 million. And in any case, was it the police that was counting the money? Because it was the police who gave us the information of the money. Is that, by you are a lawyer, I want to know. By law, is it police that's supposed to count the money that was
well, police, yes. There's a confirmed report that
yes.
There's the recovery of some monies and vehicles.
They gave us the amount, 34,500,000. That's what I read.
Yes, it's there in the social media.
Yes.
Anyway, Basdaudu, I'd like to get your take because, as I said earlier, many of the local government areas with banks, they are vulnerable. And when these attacks happen, there is usually no retaliation, no restriction, no engagement. They just go do it and they go scot-free. In fact, some of the videos online, you actually find security personnel with their rifle hiding their head somewhere. But can you really blame them against the circumstances of our country, Nigeria? Can you blame them? These security people we're talking about, they are flesh and blood. They've got blood running through their veins. They've got wives at home. They've got children. And usually when this incident, the unfortunate part of this incident happens to them, you know how their families go through. So would you really blame them that they have to just get the rifle and hide themselves somewhere, just hoping to have an opportunity to strike? Because I watched one of the videos. These guys, they were moving in groups. Some were walking on the ground with their rifles, looking for who to pounce on. I mean, it was scary and daring. I'd like to get your take on this, Barrister Daud.
Well, the first thing is our security architectural design, which I have oftentimes said it is a reactive system. It's not a proactive system. It's a system where you react to events. No. There is what is called information gathering and utilization. To evaluate information. That is not in our police system. Now, there is also some cautious steps you take in areas that are perceivably vulnerable. All of these are not taken. For instance, if you look at the operations where the banks are, they are, of course, in the same place. All the banks
same access.
Same access. There would have security checkpoints up to 4 or 5 there, so that the navigation there will not be seamless, will not be an easy stop. That would be a cautious way of course, monetary security within that area. That was not there. You can also forget that the police personnel also do not have the sophisticated wherewithal, equipments or weapons to fight real daredevils criminals. They don't have. But the problem is that we continue to see budgetary allocations to the police sector. But the question is that, how have that been utilized to, of course, enhance police? They also do not have protective gadgets, which, of course, you can put in your head, in your chest, and some other parts in the event of eventuality. They don't have. So they are vulnerable themselves. Even though, of course, they are touted as police officers, they do not have what it takes to actually confront policemen, to confront criminals where, of course, such incidents occurs. That is one. The aspect as to whether or not it is the police who, of course, quelled the issue, I think credit should be given to the vigilante and the boys there. It is not with due respect. I can say this without minusing any word, that it was the effort of the citizens of Uromi that, of course, were able to arrest the situation.
Does this reverberate the issue of community policing, state police, as it were?
I have stated it of the two times.
Yes.
police security, vigilante,
Yes.
or community policing, whatever you call it, is now an ideal way of checking the excesses of bandits, criminals, armed robbers, and all of that. But again, the problem we are currently having, for instance, in Edo State, is that these persons who are volunteer vigilante are not being remunerated by way of encouragement. You see, you also see them begging on the road. Say, please find me, I have not taken water today. So you see, I have stated here that there is no law that stops the State House Assembly to initiate a law to regulate vigilante. Wherein, of course, they can be paid some stipends for money, because the security, the protection of lives and property is the function of government at all levels. So if a state government, of course, have a legislative framework to regulate the recruitments, the management, and the running of vigilante, which have records and data with state government, of course, they know that they are also having security protection of their engagement with government. They will not be fully engaged. And as such, issue of security votes going to governor and all of that not be accounted for will now be properly be accounted for, because the security vote being given to governors and other political officers that local government is to be accounted for on ground of security. So if they are not being utilized for the purpose of protecting the lives of citizens, it means the purpose for which that money is being given to governors is defeated. Okay. So that money should be channeled now for the purpose of security. Okay. And how do you do that? You go by way of this. Now, let me just quickly react to the issue of whether or not police should be the one to count the money. You see, whatever is recovered after a theft is regarded as an exhibit.
Of course.
And if this exhibit must, of course, be properly be accounted for, the police authorities are empowered by law to determine what was actually recovered.
All right, Chris, you wanted to add something on this?
Yes, he has raised many salient points. That's state government's law, to back the vigilantes, so that I think Edo State should pursue that now. We can look for creative ways to fund them. If the security vote is not adequate, you can have creative votes. You can raise a
special intervention
fund for them within the state. The state people are willing to pay. Yeah. Now losing lives and property the way they've lost lives. And in any case, when we're talking about training and all that, well, I don't want to be beating the bush. But you remember the California bank robbery? The discovery of a Kalashnikov AK-47. It was robbers that first tested, and they tested it against police intelligence. The police only had pictures. You watch that film?
Yes.
And they were able to conquer the AK-47 armed robbers. So training, intelligence, and so on, they all go into it. You keep giving complaints and complaints. You have not gone on. Like the police disband itself. If they think that government is not funding properly and then they don't have the wherewithal to, let them disband themselves and say, look, we are no longer working as this mountain government will see to our plight. You are there on the road, you are doing macho on the road, you are stopping drivers, you are harassing everybody on the road. But when it comes to when you should show your macho, we are not seeing you there. Let us hear that 5 of you went there, 2 were killed. It's a call of duty. And I'm not sure if the military will run away. Even if it's one soldier, he will go there and die.
We saw videos.
Yes.
Soldiers still had rifle.
Because they need command. Soldiers cannot operate in that environment. They're not mandated to.
So what were they doing there?
No, they were there for other duties. You think were soldiers supposed to be guiding the banks? So they could have been going anywhere. They must get command from their barracks before the soldier will act.
Okay. Our studio number 052290573. Give us a call and talk to us about your take on the discussion so far. Please endeavor to stay civil and be brief, because so many other people are waiting on the line to make their contribution. Good morning, caller. You are live on the program. Tell us your name and where you're calling us.
Okay.
Yes, good morning.
Okay, my name is Engineer Odiase.
Engineer Odiase, where are you calling us from?
I'm calling from Oloko.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Please, I am so shocked to what happened to the time. Because in a country where we have security, a country that is orderly, that is order, that is aligned with responsibility. If a robber will be robbed for 2 hours, they could not have a security backup to face them. For it to take a very there, Benin to Urum is up to 2 hours. So they could not go there to start the situation. What kind of country are we? I'm very disappointed. You see an American say I'm an American that I'm proud to say. But we Nigerians are proud to say I'm a Nigerian because of these kind of things that are happening around us. Please, we have to do something about this. Let's save this country. Thank you.
All right, Engineer Ojase, thank you for your contribution. 052-290-573. Talk to us on politics today on independent television and radio.
Yeah, Bishop Tony.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. This is Pastor Isaac, Pastor of the whole world.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
Bishop Tony, hello?
Go ahead, we're hearing you. Can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Can I not work like you? I don't know what civilians try to tell police what to do. What is important is that they were able to trap the armed robber down. And the vigilante you are giving praise to, it is police that killed them. It is police that is directing the vigilante. The idea vigilante don't get today. They are starting from police. We cannot tell police, we cannot carry police away from this victory, and those people are scared from this armed robber. So, Bishop Sonny, I want to ask, what is the meaning of honorable? I tell you, many of us, we don't understand most English in this program. This program is for the poor. The program is for the rich. It's for the educated people. It's for non-educated people like me. English is too hard. English is not of us here. Thank you. God bless you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. The program is for everybody, both the rich and the poor, both the educated, highly educated and uneducated, and those who are not even educated at all. So the program is for everybody, and we communicate in a language that everybody understands. If peradventure a word is used that you really don't understand, there are ways to go about it. When you talk about vulnerable, it has to do with people that can easily be affected by a situation. That's what we're talking about, easily be affected by the situation, all right? So I hope that is clear to you, Bishop Isaac.
Pastor of the whole world.
Pastor of the whole world. Thank you. Tell us your name and where you're calling from. Please ensure you turn down the audio level on your TV set.
That I have just done. Good morning. This is Daddy Empress calling from Obiogi.
Okay, please go ahead.
Now, let us start by saying that I would not blame any uniform body, start on the police, for not going to the scene of crime. Because like somebody said in the studio, these persons are made of blood. Now, a situation whereby a uniform person will want to do his job, and at the end of the day, he is cut down by these bad boys. What will be the reward of the family at the end of the day? To say, your father died in active service to the state or to the nation, and because of this he has done, during funeral or after funeral, the government is going to give you so and so amount, so as to encourage other uniform bodies that would have loved to do the same. There is no encouragement. So if I am a police officer, I have wives in the house, I have children who are looking up to me on a daily basis, my brother, I will not dare, because I know so well that if I mistakenly go, government don't know whether my wife exists, they don't know whether my children exist. God bless you, sir.
All right, thank you very much for your call. Hello, caller, good morning.
Hello,
What's your name?
morning. Good morning, sir.
Yes, good morning. What's your name and where are you calling from?
My name is Dr. Terry Osawara. I'm calling from Monsieur.
Please go ahead, Dr. Jerry.
Yes, I want to say that my dad was a retired police officer, and I know a little about them.
Okay.
But what they become of recent is alarming. Go to any police station, sir. It should be as if it's a business center. As soon as you walk in there, they'll begin to ask you, which bring you come? Which one? You want the person? You want more? Who make arrest? It's a business center. Okay, again, I don't know. I may not be too professional in their business, but as this armed attack has taken place, which officers will be called to answer questions? The DPO, the area commander. No. People should be made to answer. Why were your men not mobilized? Why were people not there? Some of us are saying that the police officers are afraid if they die. Is that not the thing called to do? Is that not the job? I know that they are humans, but in the other regard, that's the job they've been called to do. If you know you are scared, then resign and go look for something else to do. You cannot be receiving salary on a monthly basis, and you are saying, but if they are going to arrest Yahoo boys, have you seen the ones that are going to arrest Yahoo boys? They are properly equipped with bulletproofs. About 20 of them can go and arrest 2 Yahoo boys.
Yes. Okay, let me.
So when you say armed robbery attack is going on, you say they cannot go there. They begin to say they don't have equipment. If they go to, I've seen many of them coming to arrest Yahoo boys. Yeah. They wear enough bulletproofs, and they are rolling as if they are going to arrest someone to take AK-47. They should be made to answer questions. The area commander, they are the DPO close to that case, should be called to answer questions. That's my take, sir.
All right. Let me give Barrister UL Osawage the opportunity to also contribute. Barrister Osawage, thank you for joining us on Politics Today. Good morning.
Thank you, Pastor Sonny, for the opportunity given to me.
Yes.
Tommy, I just want to get some contributions with respect to the issues that was discussed concerning the provisions that had to do with resignation of government appointees or political office holders before they can participate in the political electionary processes. Okay. Now, I want you to understand the jurisprudence behind that, the philosophy behind it. The philosophy behind it is this: to look for ways to take out the hands of the executive, with particular reference to the governors and the president, from manipulating, from directing, from influence, undue influence over delegates. Now, since the direct primaries issue has failed, I share the opinion of my learned friend Daudu with respect to whether it's an affront to the Constitution. I don't think so. But with the view that he had, that direct primaries being put in being regulated by statute, or primaries of the political parties being regulated by statute, I don't share his views. And I'll tell you the reason. We cannot continue to do one thing the same way and begin to expect a different result. We often complain about how our leaders, how the process that throws up leaders, and how this process been, particularly with political leaders. That it has always been through this way of direct primaries, indirect primaries, delegate primaries. And who influences, who has what it takes to be able to say, this is who I want? Yeah. It is the governors who have the resources. It is the governors. And you see that the reason why you see governors fighting for the soul of the party. Once they get into office, what they got to do is to ensure that the structures, so that they can determine, particularly for those who want to come for the second day.
Our time is up. Our time is up. I'm afraid our time is up. Yeah. Our time is up. Thank you. Well, let me say big thanks to our panelists here, Barrister Sonny Daudu. Thank you for coming. Governor Christopher Ajebe, thank you for coming. I know there are several other people that would have loved to call and be part of the discussion, but well, there's always another day. I want to say big thanks to you for staying with us. If you listen to us on radio or you watched us in any part of the world via our website, we thank you so much for staying with us on the program. Have a beautiful weekend ahead, and our heart goes out to the families of those who lost their loved ones in the Uromi bank robbery. We pray that we pray for the repose of their souls, and God grants you the fortitude to bear the loss. That's our program for today. Have a beautiful weekend. Bye for now.